Good afternoon, anti-novelists and friends. Welcome back to this episode of Zettelkasten for fiction writers, where imagination finds order. So, what you're looking at is the entire book. This is 2 expander-sized happy planners. This section, this is parts 1, 2, and 3 of the book, which are the first 9 chapters. The second half picks up with chapters number 9 and 10 and goes through chapter 22. So this is the part, this is the beast that I'm working on now. So it's coming slow. Today has been a fight, but it's coming. So what I wanted to take a quick spin through with you is this chapter. Chapter 9, section 905. This is entitled The Novel Doctor. So let's go back through quickly at some of the things that we've already covered. We've looked at how to story out a model, how to model out a story of your book by using our diagrams and pacing those out, figuring out where things go. That's one way to visualize it, which you may recall looks like this. This was our little example that I sketched out when we were talking about how do you get your character from point A to point B and who needs to be involved, etc., and so forth. So that's one component. That's a visual form of looking at your story structure. And then we've talked about plot box, which this is 32 plot points and beats punctuated by about another 40 potential prompts for things that could happen. This is another way where you're taking those note cards that you're creating on your characters, on your events, scenes and sequels, etc., and you're tucking those in to these little plot points where you think those things might happen so that you can get that eagle eye view of your story and the sequence that things need to happen as you're doing the writing. Then yesterday, in the kind of longish video number 116, I showed you my timeline process. So think of my timeline process as another example of this kind of story modeling. For me, rather than using points like I did in this example, I just used a calendar. So I'm literally just timelining out, okay, if this happens in August, then this needs to happen in September. If this happens on September 4th, then this needs to happen at least on the 2nd, etc., and so forth. And so that's how I break down exactly what order things happen in my book. So I just use the big fold out timeline so I can see it all, and that allows me to put it in order so I can do the writing. So the section here that I'm working on, what I call the Novel Doctor, this section is all about transitions. Something that I learned when I was teaching college writing is my students were really good at visualizing the scenes they wanted to write, what they wanted to happen, just kind of having a good intuitive sense of their story. One of the places where they always struggled was in the transition between scenes. So you get to the end of a scene, you've written up the sequel to it so that you know what the natural outcome of that event was, and now you're ready to move on to the next thing. Well, do you do that within the same chapter? Do you just keep stacking the scenes up until they just sort of fizzle out at some kind of a finishing point? Does each one become its own chapter? This can be really confusing. So what I'm doing in this section is I'm breaking down for you a set of transition suggestions. So like here, an obvious one is to have a cliffhanger. So that kind of dun 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 moment where you leave your reader wondering, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? I got to find out. Because ultimately you want them to keep turning pages, right? In addition to the cliffhanger, I've got the unanswered question. Often this one can be fun because your character is learning to ask a particular question about their situation or their world, sometimes your reader has already figured out that question. I like to think of those as reader bonuses, because readers love to discover things and figure things out, and they really love to do it before the people in the story. So if you have an opportunity to make your reader figure things out and be smarter than your characters, that's just a reader bonus. Another one I've got is an accusation. Can be a fun way to wrap up a scene. I've got making a discovery, potentially a twist or some kind of alternative direction. Sometimes this can be a great tool to introduce some momentum into a story. Maybe it's you've gone into a slower or a quieter portion, and then boom, you're going to make a discovery, and that's going to switch everything up. Or that discovery is going to hinge on a twist, and again, that's going to energize the story and get that reader going on through. I have some other ones that I will refer to within this chapter where I'm going to send you over to the conflict matrix, because that's a great tool that is extremely thorough. I think it's 4 pages long, on different kinds of challenges and conflicts, again, that you can use to energize or move your story forward. So if you're struggling with scene transitions, don't think of them as an ending. Not every scene transition has to be an ending. It just has to get your reader from this point over to this point. So it can be something very small, like a change of scenery. Sometimes literally just changing the scenery can be the scene transition that you need. So have no fear. I'm walking you through that very thoroughly. I'm having you create your note cards along with me so that you will have this as a reference in your Zettelkasten that you can refer to should you get stuck writing scenes. So I will leave you there today. I've got a little time to do maybe one more writing sprint, and then we are going out with our family late this afternoon, so I'm going to have to put some clothes on. So my little sweatshirt's not going to get it done. Thank you all. As always, I appreciate you so much on days like today when the words are coming very difficult and the whole thing seems like a struggle. It's just nice to know that you're out there listening and following me on this journey, because my goal is to get this book written for you so that you can get your book into my hands. So I will see you tomorrow.